Welcome to PACKOLUTION. In this podcast series, you'll hear the experts of the packaging industry talking about sustainability and the future of packaging. It is brought to you by Watron and hosted by one of its founders, Michaela Wachtel, and Sales Director Ton Kniepscher.
Hi, welcome to another episode of PACKOLUTION, the disruptive podcast brought to you by Watron. Today we have Roland and Klooster, founder and owner of Plato Product Consultants, Professor Chair Packaging Design and Management at the University of Twente in the Netherlands, and President of the International Association of Packaging Research Institutes as our guest, with whom we'll be talking about the latest trends in packaging and packaging design. Welcome, Roland.
Thanks, welcome.
Well, the first question we always have to our guests is, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your career path, Roland, please?
Yeah, that was in the 80s. I was studying industrial design engineering at Delft University of Technology. And I was confronted with packaging. There was a professor working on the book and he needed some input. And I did a study after the use of cork and crown corks. And this interested me really in the topic. And then I got a master thesis at Heineken. It was in the time that EVOH was introduced and ketchup was suddenly in plastic bottles. And the question of Heineken was, can we use the material for whatever reason for beer, for example, for plastic bottles or for other reasons? And it's really got me interested in a fantastic field, actually, with the combination of technical issues, biological, microbiology, human behavior, the appearance of the packaging related to design. And, well, this combination has really fitted me. So, yeah, I started my own business working on packaging design, new concepts. And since 2006, I work part-time at University of Twente as Professor Packaging Design and Management, as already mentioned. And trying to bring, well, let's say, the insights and everything to young people, to engineers, to get them interested. Because, yeah, I think we still have to professionalize in this business. We need more engineers. We need more high-skilled people, young people in the field to work on all the concepts and all the questions that are raised today. Sustainability issues, human behavior, not elderly people not being able to open packaging, etc. So that's about myself.
What is the basic information to consider when it comes to packaging design? How do you brief your student, for example?
Packaging design, from my perspective, is about taking decisions. It really depends on the question that you get from a company or from whatever statement or where people are working on. But it's about choosing the material, setting dimensions, thinking about the influence of legislation, about the packaging process on fast-running lines, the appearance of the pack. And there is a certain hierarchy, but it really depends on the product you're packing. It depends on all the things that are already set. I often call them starting points in the design project. Sometimes you could state, for example, for bottles, the maximum height of a filling machine is 270 millimeters or something. Still, designers or design agencies come up with bottles that are higher than that because they like the shape or whatever, And some things you can't change. So these are really, so you just can't change the filling machine or buy another one, because of the investments. And many designers don't understand issues like this. So there are a lot of things that are already defined and set. And within all these constraints, you have to design your packaging. And that's often a big challenge.
If you would take a top three in these starting points, what would be your top three?
In the starting points, the things that are already set is dimensions because of packaging machines and logistics. That's an important one. Sometimes mostly it's dimensions related and sometimes it's production technique related.
Okay. I've come across some examples of that as well, where it just doesn't run on the line. I think it's critical that the designers go into factories and then see for themselves how it works.
Absolutely true. And there's a lot of even when you think you understand it, there are often many things that are not measured, not taken up in specifications that can influence line behavior of packaging. And I've seen so many issues with plastic films running at high speed. and stiffness and friction not being specified. A small change, even on the surface, going from high gloss surface to matte surface, and a tremendous loss of efficiency on the line without understanding what really the cause is.
So these are some hard facts I want to say about packaging design, something that are obvious that you have to take into account certain measurements, but there are also subjective components in design. I think, like, what do consumers think when they see a packaging? What feelings do they have? So which consumer emotions need to be considered when it comes to the packaging design?
We did research at university after the influence of design, and the question was, can you, for example, make a design such that it looks healthy, or that it tells you something about the packaging? And that's really interesting, because choice behavior at shops, as we know, is a stressful activity. Actually, you have to make so many choices, and psychologists say that about 70% of the choices that we make is based on emotions. So we don't think, and we have really difficulties to read and to see many details on the packaging when we pass by. So on one side, packaging designers are fighting to be sure that they are noticed. So the conspicuousness, so being different or sending out a message which is different than competitors, is really important. But on the other side, we know that when people see a pack, they see the total packaging. And we use the German word for this, the Gestalt. So the total view of the package, the contour, the contrast, the colors, the pictures, everything in one image. And when they zoom in, when they stop and look at it, mostly the color and the contour come first, and the pictures and the readings come as one of the last things, because you could say from evolution, we really learn to look at details later. You first want to know if you have to run or you have to fight, or if it's friendly or not. So you look at the contour and the shape and the contrast, and then you look at all the other issues. And that's what you see back a bit in the way how we look at packaging.
That's an interesting emotion in a supermarket shelf. But I think this is what A.G. Leffley, a former chairman of P&G, called the first moment of truth, isn't it?
Yeah, the first moment of truth is attracting attention, and that's absolutely right. And some people say then, yeah, the packaging is the first moment of truth. There's a big paradigm shift at this moment.
Okay.
And that's what being called the 0 moments of truth. Because youngsters, millennials, they learn to look at products totally different than we did. We had to use magazines, we had to go to libraries, we were asking friends, we went to shops, and now they have internet, they have WhatsApp groups, they ask their friends what they choose for products, etc. And for them, the story is really important. And mostly the story is only one sentence. And if I ask students, for example, which brand is behind the sentence, I started in the garage, or we didn't know where the ingredients came from, so we started buying them ourselves. They know. They just can tell you that's Ben & Jerry or that's Apple, or we didn't like the smoothie in the shop, so we started making them ourselves. So that's innocent, they say.
Yeah.
So it's one sentence, and that's the reason to believe. And the reasons to believe have to be fair, honest, and they have to be part of the brand and the total message the brand is bringing. And this is a big shift in brand strategy, as you can see nowadays. So even brands that already are on the market for more than 100 years, 150 years, suddenly tell us, we started in 1923, and they show you a story. They never did. So why would we be interested in this? But that's really interesting to see, because they understand that youngsters are really looking at it totally different than we do.
But then, of course, you have to do a split marketing strategy in your design, because you also have the millennials and the boomers who still need to buy your product as well.
The interesting thing, if I show commercials to boomers or other generations, then it's interesting to see that, and I tell them, did you see that suddenly the message came in, how they started? And they say, oh yeah, now you say, I see it. But they didn't notice before, because for them, the brand already is a concept. And they don't see the change, and they think, oh, they added something to it, okay, or probably they wanted to, but they don't see the message behind it. And in the past, when you had a brand, they could just make products. But nowadays, you need a product with a story, and that the brand is built around that. And that's the biggest change. And that is this paradigm shift in marketing, which is really interesting to see.
And how do you see a difference there in the design of the actual packaging? Does this come into the equation as well?
Yeah, a little bit, because in some way, the packaging must fit to the message and to the whole story, you could say. Because if a man just said, I started in the garage, and you see his design and being different and all the white products that they design and also the packaging that belong to that. I mean, if you buy whatever computer, a Dell or a Hewlett Packard, you expect a brown box. If they would send it to you in a white box, you would be a little bit annoyed. Well, why do they need a white box? But if Apple would use a brown box, you also would say, well, what's this? What are they doing? I mean, this is not Apple, you know. So if you talk about and then suddenly you can see that sustainability issues are completely gone, you know, because then the brand wins. And that's really interesting if you talk about emotions and other things and how people judge products and packaging.
It has to be consistent.
It has to be consistent. That's very important. Yes, absolutely.
So sustainability and recycling are currently playing an increasingly important role. We were talking about that in our last podcast a lot, but very obviously it's not clear to people whether or how they should separate the packaging. And this, of course, also has to do with the design. So from your point of view, what is the current consensus on that?
Yeah, splitting waste is really difficult, especially what you see now with all the new packaging concepts coming in and the replacement of the plastic cups, plastic trays by coated cartons, etc. So really, people are really confused. So what we see more or less is that if you separate packaging from other products, that really helps in sorting. It would be fine if the rigid would be split from the flexibles, but this is going to be, I think, a little bit difficult. But at the moment as well, sorting techniques are developing rather fast. Infrared is being used to sort on materials, but we also have watermark techniques, and in the Holy Grail there are several were tested. Digimark is one which can be used all over the chain, but the curve code from Grade is one which is only used at the end of the chain just to sort the material. So we see some possibilities there. New legislation came in about food contact materials being recycled back to food contact materials. This was introduced half of September. And they more or less said that if you sort plastics from unsorted waste, you can't use it back again for food packaging. So this is going to be a little bit more difficult and to know where it came from and what it is, etc. But we will see how this will work out. On the other hand, I'm always a bit surprised because if you look to the role of packaging in total waste, I think it's 2% or something. And the carbon footprint of packaging related to all products is even less than 2%. In littering, it's a lot, but people look at flexibles. At the moment, the last year, the amount of plastics being used by people on average per day, it's about 100 grams on average per day in the Netherlands, and this is growing. Because people don't want to have plastic bags and all these things, not even for the vegetables that they collect themselves, but on the other side, they buy buckets for yogurt, which are heavier than ever, with a lid or with something with a handle to carry it, etc. We see dosing caps coming in, we see more functions in plastic packaging coming in, etc. So on one side, the focus is on flexibles mainly, and not on other packaging or packaging material.
You mentioned in the pre-talk that with recycling, not only the material has to be considered, but also the size of the packaging. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, as many people don't know how the sorting of the packaging works, but if you can just look at YouTube movies. First, all the packs are going into big drums that rotate, and they blow air through the drums. So everything which is flexible, smaller than A4 size, is blown out. It is too lightweighted to be sorted. And on sorting lines, it's really hard to sort flexibles. So then a lot of those small packages are blown out. And we see companies working on, for example, Krusli bars or chocolate bars going from laminates to mono materials. Mm-hmm. Why should you? Because it's not being sorted and recycled. It's going to a mix which is hopefully a little bit remelted and else is being used for energy production. So okay. I don't know what those companies are doing. They absolutely want to use the word, we want to be recyclable. Mm-hmm. And maybe they made some promise or political statements behind it that can account as well, but it looks a bit weird. And on the other part, rigid as well, if a rigid is smaller than 50 millimeter diameter, it's also not being sorted because it's falling through holes in the drums, because it's too small. On the fast-running line of which runs 2.5 meters a second at least, you have to recognize the product. You have to scan it twice with near infrared to be sure what material it is, and then you can sort it. You can blow it out. But if it's too small, it's also hard to blow it out with a blowing system. So yeah, we're only sorting the big things actually. So that is a thing that we should understand, and which makes it difficult for some companies to make a choice on dimensions. If you're very close to 50 millimeters and you want to reduce your pack size, then for sure you're not being sorted anymore.
Do you see any change coming in the near future with the recycling, so that it optimizes, so that these monomaterial smaller parts are being recycled?
Yeah, we see a little bit that some of the sorters go back to 45 millimeters. Yeah. And one of the reasons is, for example, in the Netherlands, aluminium beverage cans are now going towards refund money, and also the small PET bottles have refund money. So for them, the income goes down, the benefits goes down. So they have to they have to find new ways. But finally, there will be some kind of equilibrium between how small can you go and how fast can your line still run. So it's probably an economic formula behind it, but it will be hard. But on the other side, I mean, in the 90s and in the year zero, if you don't sort the plastic and you burn it for energy production, it works, because then we can heat cities, etc. And now some of the burners the waste processors have to buy plastic waste in England or Italy to burn it. So I think we have to look at it from a much wider perspective than what we do now.
So we already talked about that a little bit in the beginning. Some companies obviously want their packaging to reflect what their product is all about. For example, they want the design to look really healthy if the food's supposed to be really healthy. Is it possible to design packaging that looks healthy, the way that the packaging looks healthy? Maybe you said already something about it, but I think there's so much more to say.
Yeah, there's much more to say, but I try to keep it a bit shorter. I can tell hours about it, because we put people in an MRI scan and then we ask them to choose between two packs. And as soon as if you ask them, choose the healthiest, you can see that a lot of parts of the brains are working from left to right and again, etc. And the same accounts for if you ask them, choose the most sustainable one. People are really confused in such difficult questions. They think, is this healthy or not healthy? And you can see all the changes going on and the message about healthiness not being clear. And finally, what we found out is that if you want to tell people it's healthy, you just have to use a very nice picture of a healthy lady or of a natural environment or something. Because if you tell them very clearly in text, this is healthy, then they feel a little bit like they are a school kid or something, that the teacher is telling you what to do and not what to do, and they don't like that. So that was more or less the conclusion of this research.
It needs to be visual.
Yeah, it needs to be very visual. That absolutely works. Yeah. We are still simple. We go back to the Gestalt, isn't it? So we see the image and it tells us, and then we are happy.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. In our pre-discussion, you also told us something about really bad packaged products that you've seen in your career. Without calling names, but could you give us some examples of worst packaging you've ever encountered?
Well, we have seen packaging designs, and just on the appearance, which was so bad that you could only think one thing: this must be cheap. And this is what you sometimes see with soup packages in the Aldi or the Lidl, for example, and also with orange juice packs from cheap brands. So they really choose colors which fits really bad, and they use a very strong blue colors for orange juice, and then you think, oh, this must be cheap, and it is cheap. So you can use it on one side to tell people this is very healthy and interesting and high quality. You can also use it the other side and tell people this is very cheap.
So that may have been a conscious decision.
How you mean?
This may be a conscious decision. They wanted to give the image of being cheap.
Yeah, that's absolutely a conscious decision. That's absolutely clear. But this is on the design side. There are also examples of packs which are technically not really right, or wrong choices or wrong materials. For example, using LDPE in combination with oils, and the LDPE absorbs the oils and caps come off. And well, I can write a book, I think, about all the things that went wrong in the field of packaging.
Yeah, the focus in the current packaging world is on sustainability for obvious reasons, and also, of course, nowadays on energy saving. What about food safety? Can these three factors be combined in a new packaging design, in your opinion?
Yeah, they absolutely can, but we need proper people. We need educated people in this field that understand what's going on in the field of materials, where the hazards are. And at the moment, food hazards have to take up packaging materials in their audits, but they have a background in biology or food technology or something, and not in packaging and packaging materials. So that's already one issue. And I also see that companies are not really working according GMP as they should do. So there are absolutely food hazards, but they're already now in the field of packaging. But we need to become more sustainable. We need more engineers in the market and high educated people, because packaging is absolutely a profession and you just can't do it. What many companies, especially SMEs, are doing at this moment, that somebody from quality or purchasing or operational management is doing packaging as well. If you are at that level, then we can absolutely be sure that mistakes are being made.
And how do you see the future of packaging, the 3R, the future of reuse, refillable, and returnable systems?
Yeah, many people think now, because of all these sustainability issues, that a lot of packs will be refillable or reusable. But the trend is just totally the other side. And if you look at the 1970s, we spent 45 minutes on making food, the meal per day, and now we spend 17 to 18 minutes, and still the time is getting decreased. Plastics give us fantastic solutions. And so more or less my conclusion was, after combining all these trends, is that every 5 grams of plastic that we use per day saves about 4 to 8 minutes. And this is making food and doing shopping and all the luxury, all the portions and everything being done for you. It's already being washed when it's in the pack. It's very hygienic and clean. And it's already cut in pieces, if you like, and so on and so on. So, yeah, reusable means that we have to tell people you can save packaging materials, but you have to put the efforts in. And this is human behavior, which is really difficult to change, because even shopping is changing, because people bring your shopping stuff to your home and you can just order it easily and reorder it easily, etc. So I think it is on small scale. We will pick up probably some things that will be refillable, reusable, but scale size is really important for the brands that choose it to be effective.
To stay on refillable packaging, do you believe that the consumers should get a price reduction for the product? Because after all, they're doing some of the work that the food producer normally does, like cleaning the packaging and making sure that it's filled properly.
I think it's more or less in the price, isn't it? If you look to the beer companies, then a returnable crate, and there it's effective and efficient,
Yeah.
then it absolutely works. So then the beer is per liter a little bit cheaper than if you buy it in a can or a one-way bottle. But I think for many other things, in the near future, trays for meals will be introduced that will be refillable, returnable. It really depends on the scale size, if it can be even more economically beneficial. If it's not, then we don't get a reduction in price, but we have to do the efforts to save packaging materials. If the total carbon footprint will be lower, that will still be a question, because of all the cleaning and all the checks that you need. So it's not so easy as many people think.
And is there any impact on food safety with refillable packaging, in your opinion?
Maybe, but I'm not sure. I think that nowadays we can clean so well and we can check so well. If everything works well, I think we can do that.
We have reached the end of the episode. We always like to ask our guests if there's anything that you would like to say, any more to add to what we have already asked.
Yeah, for me, the most important thing for me is that people understand that packaging is a profession. And this means that the position in the company should be at more or less stable and not 4 layers behind finance or whatever. So if you have to tell something, or if you need a change, that the lines to management are not as long as they are in many companies nowadays. You have to take it serious. If your packaging is not okay, you throw away your product as well. While the focus from the outer world is on the pack and not on the product, but it absolutely needs attention and well-educated people. And I think that's, for me, still the message and the reason, one of the reasons that I work in this field and that I work at university, trying to get young people interested and to bring them to the field. And up to now, 129 graduated on packaging and more than 70 of them work in the field. So we are making small steps, but we still have to continue doing this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. So this concludes another episode of our podcast, PACKOLUTION. Thank you, Roland, for sharing your experiences and vision with us. Very interesting for us and hopefully for our listeners. Please stay tuned in this channel for more inspiring episodes of PACKOLUTION with experts in the packaging industry.